Commander Ethan Carter had seen countless battlefields in his years as a military officer. He had fought against aliens, pirates, and hostile factions on distant planets, but nothing had prepared him for the strange mission he was about to embark on. The planet Xiria was on the edge of human-controlled space, a place known for its peaceful but mysterious alien inhabitants, the Xirians. This was no typical mission. Instead of guns and war, Ethan was tasked with negotiating peace. The Xirians had invited a delegation to discuss the terms of an alliance. The atmosphere on Xiria was unlike anything Ethan had ever experienced. The sky was a deep purple, with two moons casting a pale glow over the lush alien landscape. Trees that seemed to hum with energy lined the streets of the Xiran city. The architecture was beautiful, tall, elegant spires made of iridescent materials that shimmered in the light. It was a city that seemed both ancient and futuristic, as if it had existed for millennia, yet it was in perfect harmony with technology. Ethan stood on the balcony of his quarters, watching the city below. His mission was clear: establish an alliance to ensure the Xirians remained neutral in the ongoing war between humans and another alien race. The last thing he expected, however, was to meet someone who would change the course of his life forever. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. The door to his quarters opened, and an aide entered, bowing respectfully. "Commander Carter, the Xirian delegation is ready to meet with you. Princess Aisha has requested your presence," the aide said. Ethan nodded. "Lead the way," he replied. The walk through the palace was quiet, filled with the sounds of Xirian technology humming softly in the background. The corridors were lined with strange alien artwork, pictures that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. Soon they reached the main hall, a grand chamber filled with Xirian nobles and diplomats. In the center of the room stood Princess Aisha. She was young, with an otherworldly beauty that immediately caught Ethan's attention. Her long silver hair shimmered in the light, and her eyes were a striking shade of violet, filled with intelligence and an undeniable sadness. She wore a flowing gown made of a fabric that seemed to change color with every movement. Despite the grandeur of the room, it was Aisha who stood out. As Ethan approached, the room fell silent. The Xirians had never seen a human in such close proximity. The tension in the air was thick, but Aisha did not seem intimidated. She stepped forward, her movements graceful and serene. "Commander Carter," she said, her voice soft but strong. "Thank you for coming. I have waited long for this day." Ethan smiled politely. "It is an honor to meet you, Your Highness. I trust we can come to a peaceful agreement today." Aisha nodded, but there was something different in her expression, something far more personal than a diplomatic greeting. She stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his. "Will you be my father?" she asked suddenly, her words barely above a whisper. The question hit Ethan like a shockwave. He froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. The room was silent as everyone turned their attention to the young princess and the human officer. Ethan's mind raced. He had prepared for war talks, alliances, and strategies, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Excuse me?" he asked, his voice filled with confusion. Aisha looked up at him, her violet eyes filled with sincerity. "Will you be my father?" she repeated, her voice tinged with a mixture of hope and sorrow. The room seemed to hold its breath as the weight of her words hung in the air. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He had seen a lot in his time as a commander, but the vulnerability in her eyes made his stomach tighten. The question didn't feel like an order or a request. It felt like a desperate plea for help, something that went beyond diplomacy. "Princess Aisha," Ethan began, taking a step back, trying to understand the situation. "I am honored, but I am here as a representative of Earth, not as a father." Aisha lowered her gaze for a moment, her silver hair falling to cover her face. She seemed small, fragile, standing among the powerful leaders of her people. But when she spoke again, her voice was stronger. "My people are gone," she said, softly. "I am the last of the Xyrian royal line. The prophecy says that a human will protect me, care for me. You are the one the prophecy spoke of." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors about Xyrian prophecies, but he never thought they would apply to him. The Xyrians were an ancient race with a rich history, and their beliefs ran deep. But to be chosen as the guardian of their princess? That was beyond anything he had imagined. "I'm not sure what you mean by prophecy," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But I came here to help establish peace, not to become—" He paused, unsure how to phrase it. "A father figure." Aisha's eyes brightened for a moment, her hope flickering. "I am alone," she said, her voice quiet but pleading. "My people are lost, and I have no family. I need someone to protect me, someone to guide me. You are the one, Commander Carter. You are my father." Ethan swallowed hard. He had never been a father. His life had been consumed by the military, by the battles he fought, and the wars he led. He didn't know how to care for a young alien girl, especially one who carried the fate of her entire species on her shoulders. Ethan began, but he couldn't finish. How could he explain that he was not the right person for this? Yet in that moment, as he looked into Aisha's pleading eyes, something inside him stirred. He had seen suffering and loss, but never like this. Never had he felt so responsible for the future of another being. "I can't promise you that I'll be your father," Ethan finally said, his voice softer than before. "But I will do everything I can to protect you. I will make sure you're safe." Aisha's face lit up with a gentle smile, the first time Ethan had seen her truly smile. "Thank you," she whispered, and for the first time, he saw something in her eyes that wasn't sadness or fear, hope. The following days on Xyria were filled with discussions about the Xyrian prophecy and the looming threat that hung over the planet. Ethan found himself in a world unlike any he had ever encountered, peaceful, yet filled with an underlying tension. The Xyrians, though advanced in technology, were a peaceful race, focused on knowledge and harmony. But with the arrival of Ethan and Aisha, everything changed. Ethan had expected the diplomatic talks to follow the usual course, negotiations, compromises, and promises of alliance. Instead, he found himself constantly drawn to Aisha, the young princess who had captured his attention since the moment they met. She was unlike any person he had ever encountered. Her beauty was striking, but it was her sadness that lingered in his mind. Ethan spent the next few days trying to understand more about the Xyrian prophecy. He met with scholars and diplomats, all of whom seemed to agree on one point. Aisha was the last hope of the Xyrian people, but no one had ever expected the human commander to be the one who would fulfill this ancient prophecy. The idea of a human becoming a guardian and protector of the Xyrian heir was both unprecedented and deeply troubling to some. As Ethan sat in a grand library with Aisha, he tried to absorb all the details of the prophecy. Aisha was seated beside him, her silver hair flowing gently as she flipped through a holographic scroll that detailed the history of her people. "The prophecy speaks of a human who will come from the stars," Aisha explained, her voice steady, but filled with a quiet sadness. "A protector who will rise when the Xyrian people are on the brink of extinction. He will guide me, care for me, and ensure the survival of my people." Ethan listened intently, his mind racing. The idea of being the chosen protector seemed surreal, yet Aisha's presence felt undeniable. There was something about her, something that made him feel a sense of responsibility, even though he barely knew her. "But I'm not ready for this," Ethan said quietly, looking at Aisha with a mixture of concern and disbelief. "I'm a soldier, Aisha. I've never raised a child, let alone an alien princess. I don't know how to be a father figure, especially not to someone like you." Aisha turned to him, her violet eyes filled with a quiet wisdom. "The prophecy does not ask you to be my father in the way you think," she said gently. "It asks you to protect me, to guide me through the dangers ahead. It is not about fatherhood in the traditional sense. It is about a bond that transcends everything else." Ethan sat back in his chair, running a hand through his hair as he processed her words. He had fought countless battles, led soldiers, and made life-or-death decisions in the heat of war. But this was different. This was not about strategies or victories. It was about a responsibility that seemed far greater than anything he had ever encountered. It was about protecting Aisha, a young alien girl with the weight of an entire race resting on her fragile shoulders. "I'm not sure I can live up to what the prophecy expects of me," Ethan admitted, his voice tinged with doubt. "But I'll try. I can't turn my back on you, Aisha. Not after everything you've lost." Aisha smiled faintly. "You don't have to be perfect, Ethan. You just have to be there when I need you. The prophecy doesn't demand perfection. It demands that you are there for me, that you stand by me, even when everything else falls apart." Ethan nodded, his resolve strengthening. He didn't know how he would fulfill the prophecy, but he knew that he couldn't walk away from Aisha. He couldn't abandon her when she had already lost so much. And despite his doubts, despite the uncertainty that loomed over them both, he was beginning to feel something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose. As the days passed, Ethan and Aisha grew closer. They spent hours together discussing the Xerian history, their customs, and their culture. Ethan learned more about Aisha's world, about the Xerians' deep connection to nature and the powerful energy they could harness from the planet itself. The Xerians were not just technologically advanced. They were in tune with the very essence of their world, drawing strength from the environment around them. But as Aisha grew more comfortable with Ethan, she began to reveal the darker truths of her past. Her people had been ravaged by invaders, and the once thriving Xerian civilization had crumbled under the weight of war. The enemy, an alien race known as the Corthians, had struck without warning, annihilating entire cities and leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. "The Corthians are ruthless," Aisha said one evening as they walked through the palace. "Gardens. They came from beyond the galaxy, seeking to conquer us, to take control of our energy and our knowledge. They care nothing for our people. They only want power." Ethan's heart hardened at the thought of such cruelty. He had seen horrors in his own battles, but nothing compared to the fate that had befallen Aisha's people. He could understand her desire for protection, her desperation for someone to step in and save her from the terrifying reality she faced. "We'll stop them," Ethan said firmly, his eyes blazing with determination. "I won't let them take anything more from you, I promise." Aisha looked up at him, her expression softening. "Thank you, Ethan. I believe in you." But despite their growing bond, Ethan knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The prophecy was not just a symbol of hope, it was a burden, a responsibility that he wasn't sure he was ready to bear. He had never been a protector in this sense. He had always fought for a cause, led armies, and commanded battles. But now he was being asked to protect one life, a single life that carried the weight of an entire civilization. The days turned into weeks, and the tension between the Xerians and the Corthians continued to rise. Ethan could feel it in the air, the sense of impending conflict. The Corthians would come, and when they did, they would stop at nothing to destroy Aisha and the Xerian people once and for all. Ethan's training as a soldier would be put to the test in ways he had never imagined. The fight ahead wouldn't just be about military tactics. It would be about protecting the innocent, about standing in the face of overwhelming odds to safeguard those who could not protect themselves. And as the first whispers of war began to echo across the galaxy, Ethan knew one thing for certain. He would not leave Asia. Not now. Not ever. The sun dipped below the horizon of Xiria, casting long shadows over the palace courtyard. Ethan stood near the edge of the balcony, looking out into the distance. The tranquil beauty of the world around him seemed at odds with the turbulent reality that loomed closer with every passing day. The Corthians were coming, and he knew that no matter how much time they spent preparing, they would not be ready for what was to come. He turned away from the view, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. Aisha's quiet voice reached him from behind. "Commander, do you think we'll ever be ready for them?" Ethan's heart tightened at the question. It had been weighing on his mind every day since he'd promised to protect her. How could he ever be ready to face an enemy so ruthless and powerful? The Xirians had their knowledge, their technology, but the Corthians had strength and savagery on their side. He forced a smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "We will be, Aisha. We have to be." Aisha stepped closer, her silver hair shimmering in the dimming light. Despite her calm demeanor, Ethan could sense the fear beneath her composed exterior. It was the same fear he saw in the eyes of soldiers who faced an uncertain future, but with one difference. This was personal for her. She wasn't just fighting for a cause. She was fighting for her very survival. "The Corthians have no mercy," she said softly. "I've seen what they've done to other worlds. They destroy everything they touch. And now, they're coming for us." Ethan turned to face her, his resolve hardening. "Then we'll make sure they don't succeed. I promise you, Aisha. We won't let them destroy your home." The next few days were a blur of preparation and strategy. Ethan and the Xirian Council worked tirelessly, setting up defense systems and preparing evacuation routes in case of an invasion. But no matter how much they planned, Ethan knew that a peaceful solution was out of reach. The Corthians had made it clear that they would stop at nothing to take control of the Xirian world. They wanted power, and they would use any means necessary to get it. As the days passed, Ethan spent more time with Aisha, learning about the Xirian ways and culture. He found himself drawn to her, not just because of the prophecy or his duty to protect her, but because of the person she was. She was kind, intelligent, and strong, a far cry from the delicate princess he had first met. Aisha had been through so much in her young life, and yet she still had hope. She still believed that something could be done to save her people. One evening, as they sat in a quiet garden within the palace walls, Aisha spoke again. "Ethan, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about protecting me, guiding me through the dangers ahead. But I don't want to be a burden. I want to help. I want to fight alongside you." Ethan turned to her, surprised by the intensity of her words. "Aisha, I can't let you—" "I know what you're going to say," she interrupted, "but I'm not just a princess, Ethan. I'm the last of my people. I've seen what the Corthians are capable of, and I can't sit idly by while they destroy everything I hold dear." Ethan's gaze softened as he looked into her eyes. There was a fire in her that he hadn't noticed before, a strength that went beyond her title or her appearance. It wasn't just her royal blood that made her important. It was her spirit, her determination to protect those she loved. "I understand," he said finally, "but I still can't let you fight. Not in the way you think. You're the key to everything. If something happens to you—" "I'm not afraid," Aisha replied. "I can't be. Not when the future of my people is at stake." Ethan let out a long breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. She was right. She couldn't afford to be afraid, and neither could he. They were in this together now, bound by a shared purpose. As the days passed, Ethan's bond with Aisha deepened. He began to see her not just as a princess, but as someone he cared for deeply, almost like a daughter, though he was still coming to terms with the unfamiliar role he was being asked to play. He had promised to protect her, and that was exactly what he intended to do. But protecting her would be far more difficult than he had imagined. The Korthians were closing in, and their fleet was far more powerful than anything the Xerians had ever encountered. Ethan knew they needed more than just defense systems. They needed a way to strike back, to fight back against the Korthian menace. He began discussing offensive strategies with the Xerian military, trying to figure out how to turn the tide, but every plan seemed to fall short. One night, as Ethan and Aisha stood together on the balcony watching the stars, she spoke again. "Do you think we can win, Ethan? Do you think we'll be able to stop the Korthians?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "We'll find a way. We have to." But inside, he wasn't so sure. The Korthians were relentless, and no matter how hard they fought, there was always the fear that it wouldn't be enough. Aisha's people had been shattered once before, and now it was up to him and a small group of allies to prevent history from repeating itself. The days turned into weeks, and Ethan's doubts grew. The Korthians were getting closer. He could feel the pressure mounting, the weight of his promises pressing down on him. But through it all, Aisha remained strong. She never wavered in her resolve, never showed fear, even when the news came that Korthian ships were now just days away. It was then that Ethan made a decision. They couldn't wait any longer. The time to act was now. "I'm not going to let them take your world, Aisha," Ethan said, his voice steady and firm. "We're going to fight back, and we're going to win." Aisha looked up at him, her violet eyes glowing with determination. "Together." Ethan nodded. Together. The calm of Xeria's beautiful landscape belied the mounting tension in the air. Ethan could feel the shift in the atmosphere, a sense of urgency that seemed to grip everyone in the palace. The Korthian fleet was only days away, and every second counted. They had little time to prepare, and the threat they faced was unlike any they had ever encountered. Ethan spent the next few days in constant strategy meetings with the Xerian military, trying to come up with ways to defend their world. The Xerians were technologically advanced, but the Korthians had strength in numbers and weaponry. It was a race against time, and Ethan could feel the weight of the responsibility bearing down on him. His mind kept returning to Aisha. As the last of her people, she was not just their future. She was the key to everything. One evening, Aisha sought him out in the palace library. It was a quiet place, filled with rows of holographic books and ancient scrolls. The soft glow of the technology cast shadows across the room, creating an almost mystical atmosphere. Ethan turned as she entered, her silver hair flowing behind her like a stream of light. "Ethan," she began, her voice steady but filled with the same urgency that had been growing in her eyes for days. "There's something I need to show you, something that could help us fight the Korthians." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Aisha moved toward a large ancient scroll that rested on a pedestal in the center of the room. She carefully unrolled it, revealing intricate symbols and patterns that seemed to pulse with energy. Ethan stepped closer, intrigued. "This is the Xerian lineage," she explained, tracing her fingers along the delicate markings. "It's an ancient record of my people's history. But it's also much more than that. It's a map of the power we possess." Ethan frowned, trying to understand. "Power? What do you mean?" Aisha took a deep breath, as if preparing herself to reveal something that had been kept hidden for centuries. "The Xerians are not just an advanced species. We have the ability to draw power from our planet itself, energy that can be used to create, heal, and destroy. But the key to unlocking that power lies within our bloodline. It's a gift that's been passed down for generations." Ethan's eyes widened. He had heard whispers of Xerian abilities before, but he had never imagined they were so vast. "You're telling me that you have this power?" Aisha nodded. "I do. But it's not something I can control yet. I've only just begun to understand it. And with the Korthians coming, I fear I won't be able to harness it in time." Ethan looked at the ancient scroll, then back at Aisha. "So you're saying that if we can unlock this power, we can fight the Corthians?" "Yes," Aisha replied, "but it's not just about the power itself. The prophecy spoke of a human who would help me unlock it, someone who could guide me and protect me. The prophecy said that the one who stands by me would be able to help me control the energy before it consumes me." Ethan's mind raced. He had always known that there was something more to Aisha than met the eye, but he hadn't realized the true extent of what she was capable of. The thought of harnessing that kind of power to defeat the Corthians was both exhilarating and terrifying. "If this power is so important," Ethan said, "why didn't your people teach you how to use it?" Aisha's face darkened. "My people were too afraid to unlock it. They believed it was dangerous, that it could be used for destruction. But the Corthians didn't care about that. They came and they destroyed everything, knowing that if they took me, they would also have access to that power." Ethan felt a surge of anger. The Corthians had attacked without mercy, but they had also targeted Aisha for what she could become. He understood now why she had been so determined to protect herself. She wasn't just running from them, she was running from the immense power that could change everything. "We need to unlock it, Aisha," Ethan said, his voice firm. "We need to do it before they get here. This power could be the key to saving your people." Aisha nodded, but there was a hint of fear in her eyes. "I'm not sure I can control it. The energy is powerful and it's unpredictable. I've tried before, but it always feels like it's slipping away from me." Ethan stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll do it together. We'll figure it out." For the first time in days, Aisha smiled. It was a small smile, but it was enough to give Ethan the hope he needed. They didn't have much time, but they had each other, and that was enough. Over the next few days, Aisha began to teach Ethan more about the Xerian power. It wasn't something that could be learned quickly, but with every lesson they both grew closer to understanding it. Aisha showed Ethan how the Xerians could communicate with the planet's energy, drawing it from the Earth itself to heal wounds or create shields. But the energy wasn't always easy to control. Sometimes it surged too quickly, or it would vanish before they could harness it. Ethan could see the strain it caused Aisha. She was afraid of what would happen if she lost control. But he also saw the strength in her. She was willing to push past her fears for the sake of her people. And Ethan was determined to help her every step of the way. One night, as they sat together in the palace garden, Aisha looked at Ethan with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "I don't know if I can do this, Ethan. I've never had anyone to help me before. I've always been alone." Ethan smiled softly. "You're not alone anymore. We're in this together. I'll help you no matter what." Aisha's eyes filled with unshed tears. "Thank you, Ethan. I don't know what I would do without you." For a moment, they sat in silence, watching the stars above. Ethan knew that their journey ahead would be difficult. The Corthians were getting closer, and Aisha's power was still untapped. But he also knew that they had a chance to fight back, to protect what was left of Aisha's people, and to give her the future she deserved. Together, they would face whatever came next, and they would do it as a family. The day the Corthian fleet arrived was the day everything changed. The peaceful skies of Xeria darkened as massive ships loomed overhead, their shadows casting a chilling presence across the land. Ethan stood at the command center, his eyes fixed on the view screen, watching as the Corthians descended with terrifying speed. The battle was about to begin, and there was no turning back. For days, the Xerian military had been preparing for this moment, setting up defenses and mobilizing troops. But no matter how much they prepared, nothing could have truly prepared them for the force they were about to face. The Corthians were ruthless, their ships bristling with weapons of mass destruction, their soldiers cold and merciless. Ethan's hand tightened around the hilt of his sword. The time for words was over. There was no more diplomacy, no more talks. The Corthians were here, and they wanted to wipe Xeria from existence, and Ethan would make sure they would not succeed. "Commander, the fleet is in position," a Xerian officer reported, his voice filled with tension. "We're ready to engage," Ethan nodded. "All units, prepare for battle. We hold nothing back." As the Xerian forces moved into position, Ethan's mind was focused on one thing: protecting Aisha. She was the last of her people, the key to their future. Losing her would mean losing everything. He knew that he had to ensure her safety at all costs, no matter what happened on the battlefield. He turned to find Aisha standing by his side, her eyes filled with determination. She was no longer the scared princess he had met weeks ago. She had grown stronger, both in spirit and in resolve. She wasn't just standing by his side. She was ready to fight. "Ethan," she said quietly, her voice filled with conviction, "I'm not staying here. I'm not going to sit this out while my people are dying." "Aisha, you have to stay safe," Ethan replied, his voice firm. "We can't risk losing you. You're too important." "I know what's at stake," she said, her violet eyes flashing with the intensity of someone who had nothing left to lose. "I'm not going to sit back and watch while they destroy my world. I've trained for this. I'm ready." Ethan looked at her, his heart heavy with both pride and concern. He had promised to protect her, but he could see the fire in her eyes. He knew that he couldn't stop her. She wasn't the same young girl who had asked him to be her father. She was a warrior now, and he had to respect that. "All right," he said, his voice softer now. "But we do this together. We fight together. We don't leave each other." Aisha smiled, the warmth of her expression giving Ethan a moment of relief. Together. The battle began with a deafening roar. The Corthian ships launched their first wave of attacks, raining fire down on the Xerian defenses. Ethan watched as explosions lit up the sky, but he didn't flinch. He had seen worse. What mattered now was that the Xerians were fighting back. The Xerian warriors, though fewer in number, were fiercely determined. They fought with a passion that Ethan had never seen before, each one willing to die for the survival of their people. Ethan and Aisha fought side by side, their movements in sync. They were a force to be reckoned with. Ethan's military training combined with Aisha's growing power. She had learned to harness the Xerian energy, channeling it into blasts of light that struck down Corthian soldiers with a precision that left Ethan in awe. She wasn't just protecting herself, she was protecting everyone around her. As the battle raged on, Ethan and Aisha moved through the chaos, cutting through Corthian forces with calculated efficiency. But even as they fought, Ethan could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The Corthian fleet was relentless. For every Corthian soldier they defeated, 3 more seemed to appear. They were losing ground, and fast. "Ethan!" Aisha shouted over the roar of the battle. "We need to push them back or we'll never make it." Ethan nodded, but his heart was heavy. They were running out of time. He knew that if they didn't do something drastic soon, they would lose everything. "I have an idea," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "But we'll need to get to the central command tower. That's where the Corthians are controlling the fleet." Aisha's eyes widened. "We can't just go in there. It'll be suicide." Ethan's face hardened. "We don't have a choice. If we can take out their command center, we can disrupt their entire fleet. It'll buy us the time we need to turn the tide of the battle." Without waiting for a response, Ethan moved toward the heart of the Xerian capital. Aisha followed, close behind, her powers crackling with energy as she prepared to face whatever lay ahead. They fought their way through the Corthian soldiers, moving with speed and precision. Each step they took brought them closer to the command tower, but the closer they got, the more dangerous the path became. Corthian reinforcements were arriving, and they were not going to let Ethan and Aisha succeed. Finally, they reached the command tower. The entrance was heavily guarded, but Aisha and Ethan were undeterred. With a surge of energy, Aisha unleashed a powerful wave of Zirian force, knocking back the guards and clearing the way. Ethan moved quickly, entering the tower's central hub, where a massive screen showed the Korthian fleet in full force, preparing to launch a final assault on the Zirian stronghold. "Ethan, we're running out of time!" Aisha shouted. "We need to disable the fleet now!" Ethan rushed to the control panel, quickly working to override the Korthian commands. The Korthians had no idea they were coming. Ethan's fingers flew over the controls, working with the precision of someone who had spent his life in battle. With one final push, he activated the system, sending a pulse of energy into the Korthian fleet's control systems. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, the Korthian ships began to malfunction, their weapons misfiring, their systems shutting down. "It was working! We did it!" Aisha exclaimed, her voice filled with triumph. But just as they began to breathe a sigh of relief, the ground shook beneath their feet. A massive explosion rocked the building, sending them both crashing to the floor. Korthian reinforcements had arrived in full force. "We're not done yet," Ethan muttered, pushing himself to his feet. "Stay close. We finish this now." The explosion had knocked Ethan and Aisha off their feet, but they didn't have the luxury of time to recover. The building was crumbling around them, debris falling from the ceiling as the Korthians fought to regain control of the tower. Ethan scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. The mission wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. "Aisha, we need to move now!" he shouted, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the exit. They didn't have a choice. The tower was collapsing, and the Korthians were closing in. With her energy still crackling, Aisha used her powers to clear a path, blasting through the debris and knocking back the Korthian soldiers who tried to stop them. Her control over the Zirian energy had grown stronger with every battle, and now she was a force to be reckoned with. As they reached the exit, the sight of the battlefield outside was both terrifying and inspiring. Zirian forces and Korthian soldiers clashed in a brutal battle, the sounds of weapons and explosions filling the air, but the tide was beginning to turn. The Korthian fleet was still malfunctioning, and their reinforcements were losing ground. "We can win this," Ethan said, breathless from the effort. "We just need to hold on." Aisha nodded, her face determined. "We will. We have to." They joined the remaining Zirian forces, rallying the soldiers to continue the fight. Despite the destruction that had ravaged their planet, the Zirians fought with a strength that came from more than just desperation. It came from their will to survive. The Korthians had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. The battle raged on for hours, but as the sun began to rise over the ruins of the city, it was clear that the Korthians were retreating. Their ships, once mighty and unstoppable, were now falling from the sky, their systems fried by the disruption Ethan had caused. The Zirian forces pushed forward, capturing the remaining Korthian soldiers and ensuring that no threat remained. When the last of the Korthian forces were driven off the planet, a deep silence fell over the battlefield. The Zirians had won. They had done what many thought was impossible. Ziria was safe, for now. Ethan stood beside Aisha, both of them looking out over the field. The city, though scarred, still held a beauty that would never be lost. The people of Ziria had endured much, but they had triumphed. And Aisha, the last of her kind, had played a crucial role in securing their future. "We did it," Aisha said softly, her voice filled with awe. Ethan nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yes, we did." But as they stood there, taking in the victory, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that their journey wasn't over. Ziria had been saved, but Aisha still needed guidance. The prophecy hadn't just been about protecting her, it had been about ensuring that she could lead her people into the future. And that future, though bright, was still uncertain. "There's still so much to rebuild," Ethan said, his voice low. "The war is over, but the real work is just beginning. You'll need help, Aisha. You'll need someone by your side to rebuild your people. Aisha looked up at him, her violet eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and understanding. I know, she said softly. I can't do this alone, and I don't want to. Ethan's heart swelled with emotion. He had promised to protect her, but now it felt as though his role was evolving into something deeper. They had started as two strangers, brought together by fate and a prophecy. But now, they were family. And family, he realized, didn't just mean protecting someone. It meant building a future together. I'll be here, Aisha, Ethan said, his voice steady. For as long as you need me? Aisha smiled, a real smile this time, one that reached her eyes and lit up her entire face. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I won't face it alone. The battle may have been won, but their journey had only just begun. Together, they would rebuild Xiria. Together, they would protect the Xirian people, ensure that the legacy of her ancestors would live on. And together, they would face whatever challenges the future brought their way. As the days passed, the people of Xiria began to rebuild their city, their lives, and their hopes. The Xirians had endured unimaginable loss, but now they had a chance to start anew. And at the heart of it all was Aisha, the princess who had survived against all odds, and the human commander who had vowed to protect her. Ethan watched as Aisha stood before her people, addressing them with the strength and grace that only someone with a heart as pure as hers could possess. She spoke of hope, of unity, and of the bright future that lay ahead. The Xirians listened, their faith in her growing stronger with every word she spoke. And as Ethan stood beside her, he realized that he had found something in this alien world that he never thought possible. He had found a family that wasn't bound by blood but by love, loyalty, and sacrifice. In the years to come, Xiria would flourish once more. Under Aisha's leadership, with Ethan at her side, the Xirians would rebuild their world and become a symbol of hope for other species across the galaxy. And together, they would prove that no matter how different two beings might seem, they could always find common ground. They could always find a way to fight for a better future. As the sun set over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the rebuilt city, Ethan knew that his place was here, by Aisha's side. He had found his purpose, not as a soldier, not as a protector, but as a father figure, a friend, and a partner in the journey to restore a world that had almost been lost. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. But no matter what came next, they would always have each other, and that, Ethan realized, was all that mattered.